Your Excellencies, dignitaries, the Dean and members of the Diplomatic Corps, fellow Africans, ladies and gentlemen, it is my great pleasure to welcome all of you to Accra, the vibrant capital of Ghana, and to the 30th Annual General Meeting of the African Export-Import Bank, Afreximbank. Akwaba is our word of welcome, especially to those who are visiting our country for the first time. You are amongst the people who pride themselves on their sense of hospitality, and it is my hope that by the end of your visit, you will agree with this claim. This year's edition of the bank's annual meetings is particularly special for us in Ghana, for the bank, and indeed for the continent. In fact, I should say for the world, looking at the amazing audience here with us. Some of you have come from different continents, including from the Caribbean and the Americas, making the 30th annual meeting of the bank a truly intercontinental event, indeed, a veritable global African event. I thank the leadership of the bank, particularly its current president, Professor Benedict Orama, for operationalizing this Pan-Africanist vision. Several countries in the Caribbean have become full members of the bank by signing and ratifying the Partnership and Participation Agreement. By increasing trade flows on both sides of the Atlantic, we're moving away from the rhetoric that has characterized the relations between our kith and kin in the African diaspora to creating and sustaining a dynamic relationship between communities and peoples who are united by a shared history and culture. It is very heartening to see so many personalities from the Caribbean crossing the Atlantic to be with us in Accra for this anniversary. This recalls the spirit of the Year of Return that I launched in 2019, which saw hundreds of thousands of the African diaspora family from the Americas and the Caribbean coming back home to Ghana to renew their blood, cultural, and historic ties. One of the most prominent of such returnees was the Prime Minister of the Government of the Republic of Barbados, the Honorable Mia Amor Motley, QC. Who came to Ghana to pay an official visit in that memorable year at my invitation, a visit which was a spectacular success. Widely acknowledged as one of the outstanding figures of contemporary Caribbean politics, she is a great champion of the African peoples, and I'm delighted that she has returned to Accra for this conference. Her presence and that of her other colleagues give our gathering a truly global African coloring. We welcome equally heartily one of those colleagues, another prominent Caribbean leader, the Honorable Dr. Ralph Everard Gonzalez, Prime Minister of the Government of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and another such staunch defender of the African cause to Ghana. We're glad also that the Honorable Philip Davis, Prime Minister of the Government of the beautiful island nation of the Bahamas and the Chair of CARICOM, is also here with us. In addition to leaders from the Caribbean who share their perspectives on productive engagement for shared prosperity among Africans at a time of geopolitical realignment, we have with us Dr. Julius Garvey, the son of the iconic Pan-Africanist, the first true organizer of the movement of the black people, that is all people of African descent, back to Africa to create the African Republic, Marcus On behalf of all black people the world over, I would want to thank him for what he has done and continues to do to sustain the towering legacy of his father over the years. We appreciate too very much the solidarity and presence of current and former leaders on the continent. His Excellency Emmerson Mnangagwa, President of the Republic of Zimbabwe, Ghana's official in-law, His Excellency Dr. Lazarus Chakwera, President of the Republic of Malawi, His Excellency Dr. Patrice Trovoada, Prime Minister of the Government of the Democratic Republic of Sao Tome and Principe, His Excellency Chief Olusegun Baba, I should add Obasanjo as well. The former President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, His Excellency Mahamadou Issoufou, the former President of the Republic of Niger, and the architect of the African Continental Free Trade Area Agreement, and His Excellency Haile Mariam Desalegn, former Prime Minister of the Government of the Federal Democratic Republic of Ethiopia. This event is also very special because it is the 30th anniversary celebration of the founding of the bank, whose first financial transaction was a Ghanaian one, the Ghana Cocoa Board transaction, which is now displayed in the bank's corporate museum in Cairo. I applaud Christopher Addo, Jean-Louis Accra, and the third and current president, Professor Benedict Orama, for what they have done over the years in establishing a very strong bank. But Afreximbank is not just a great African institution committed to history, but it is all very committed to the development of our continent and of countries in the African diaspora. The pillars of the sixth strategic plan currently under implementation, that is intra-African trade and AFCFTA implementation, as well as industrialization and export diversification, are perfect illustrations. They are aligned with the aims of the AFCFTA and the African Union Agenda 2063 and reflect both the agility and relevance of the institution, which over the years has become one of the most systemically relevant financial institutions on the continent, with a wide range of products, a growing balance sheet, and a continental footprint, as Professor Orama so brilliantly articulated in his opening statement. And I can comfortably and convincingly say this, as the AU champion for African financial institutions and leader of a country which recently had to deal with one of the most difficult periods in its post-independent history, difficulties which were exacerbated by the reckless behavior of rating agencies that engaged in pro-cyclical downgrades, shutting Ghana out of capital markets and turning a liquidity crisis into a solvency crisis. Afreximbank, under its counter-cyclical response mechanism, provided timely support to help Ghana navigate the macroeconomic management challenges worsened by Russia's war of aggression in Ukraine in an orderly manner, when suddenly we realized we were alone. The country which had become, quote, the favorite child of bondholders and had successfully gone to market at the height of the pre-COVID-19 downturn was suddenly shut out of international capital markets. It is often said that you know who is truly your friend when you are in trouble, and is rightly stated by Dr. Martin Luther King in that often cited quote, In the end, we'll remember not the words of our enemies, but the silence of our friends, unquote. When you're dealing with powerful international financial institutions, it is important to have your own powerful financial institution. And it is so important and significant that I'm here today, just a few months after that liquidity crisis, hosting the 30th anniversary celebration of Afreximbank. What I have just said about the great relationship between Afreximbank and Ghana, most of my colleagues in this room and across the continent and the Caribbean could say the same thing. What would have happened to the continent that was still heavily commodity dependent in 2015, 2016, when what was called the commodity super cycle suddenly came to an abrupt end? When the same global financial institutions and international investors were exiting the continent en masse, weakening our currencies in the process, and further aggravating macroeconomic management challenges. Afreximbank quickly put together a counter-cyclical trade for liquidity facility to help member countries bridge the significant trade financing gap confronting them as a result of the adverse commodity terms of trade shocks. In the process, averting the cascade of trade payment defaults, which could have turned a liquidity crisis into a longer-lasting solvency and banking crisis. The $10 billion adjustment fund, which is being established by the bank in collaboration with the AFCFTA Secretariat to support countries to participate effectively in the AFCFTA, as well as the implementation of the Pan-African payments and settlement systems, which will help ensure that helpful financial mechanisms are in place to support intra-African trading, are positive steps that bode well for our rapid collective growth and development. What would have happened to the continent and to our brothers and sisters in the Caribbean after the outbreak of COVID-19, when most of us could not access either personal protective equipment or vaccines in a new and amazing world of vaccine nationalism? Working closely with the African Center for Disease Control, UNECA, and the AU envoy for COVID-19, Strive Masiyiwa, Afreximbank developed quickly the African Vaccine Acquisition Trust, AVAT, which through pooled procurement at the continental level suddenly turned us into a powerful force in the global marketplace that nobody could any longer ignore. More than saving lives, the development and effective operationalization of AVAT was a game-changing moment for the continent, or should I say for the Pan-Africanist revival, as it brought together Africa and the Caribbean in one of the most critical moments of their mutual history, where access to vaccines was the dividing line between life and death. Today, I dare say the power and commitment of one of the most relevant financial institutions in our continent put African lives before its bottom line and financial ratios. Again, I dare say the ravages of COVID-19, which brought us together in the face of rising vaccine nationalism, made us discover how important Afreximbank was to us as a continent and as a people with the same and common history. The continued growth of Afreximbank and development of Africa, again I should say of African countries around the world, had become so intertwined that the question is no longer what we should have done in the face of these major causes if Afreximbank had not been there. Instead, the key question for us gathered in Accra today is what should we be doing for Afreximbank to enable it serve us even better and to help us navigate the challenges associated with the stickiness of the colonial development model of resource and extraction, globalization, and heightening geopolitical risks, which are likely to persist in the medium and long term. And here, I'd like to wear my hat of champion of the African Union financial institutions. But before I share my reflections on perspectives on the way forward in that capacity, I'd like to make one general assessment. In the past, we have created highly promising financial institutions just to abandon them before they could even stand on their own, let alone grow into global financial institutions. The reality is that unless we have strong financial institutions, we are not going to develop. As we've learned over the past decades, relying on foreign capital is both risky and costly. It has resulted in huge financial leakages through the high costs of default-driven borrowing rates and interest payments, and undermined the growth of our financial institutions, domestic resource mobilization, and private sector development through cost of funds. The ownership of our financial institutions should be strengthened over time to enhance continuously their development and relevance. Two interventions are important to strengthen the development impact and financial wherewithal of our development financial institutions. They are capital and effective coordination with the African Union. Regarding the first set of intervention, capital, I want to reiterate that despite consistent efforts made by many African governments, including during extremely difficult macroeconomic and global operating environments, our development finance institutions remain highly undercapitalized. Just to provide an illustration and order of magnitude, the Japan Bank for International Cooperation has a share capital of some 19 billion United States dollars. China Exim has a capital of 54 billion United States dollars, whereas Afreximbank has a capital of some 6 billion United States dollars, which excludes the most recent contribution by countries supporting the ongoing general capital increase. More importantly, we need to evaluate whether this 6 billion capital is sufficient to play that catalytic role of accelerating the creation of the market with a potential combined GDP of some 3.4 trillion United States dollars for our continent. Similarly, I implore the bank's management to work to develop and implement an aggressive strategy to upgrade the bank's current credit rating from BBB to A. This would require continued strengthening of your governance and management structure, as well as personnel. I thank the leaders of those countries and encourage those who have not yet contributed to the ongoing general increase to do so. Those who can afford should consider going beyond their allocated shares. The bank has consistently paid dividends to its shareholders over the decades. As governments, our contribution to the capital of the bank is not only a good investment, but also the best way to support the development of our private sector by increasing access to and lowering the cost of funds to sustain private investment and economic growth. I believe that if we were able to gain greater control over the huge earnings that emanate from our extractive sectors and to plug the holes that permit significant outflows of illicit funds from the continent, we would be in a better position to assemble the monies necessary to strengthen the capital of Afreximbank. And I encourage the Bank of Ghana to support proactively the domestic resource mobilization program launched by Afreximbank under its central bank deposit program, CENDEP. Over the years, CENDEP has enabled Afreximbank to reduce significantly the cost of funds passed on to African sovereign and corporate entities. Regarding the second set of actions, focusing on the level of engagement with our developing financial institutions, it is important to strengthen coordination with these institutions to make sure that they are working consistently for Africa and the African diaspora, supporting their development agenda and implementation of their national development strategies. Sustaining the systemic relevance and development impact of these institutions hinges on better coordination, enhanced accountability. As a champion of the AU financial institutions, I'll be taking this important matter to the Assembly during our next meeting of heads of state and government. In the meantime, I call on the African Union Commission to expedite the process of admitting Afreximbank as a specialized agency of the African Union at the forthcoming July AU Summit. Afreximbank has played a major role in the development of our countries over the years and is expected to play an even more important role during the implementation of the AFCFTA. The bank is already a very special agency for our development, and it is time we formalize the process to strengthen further the coordination, enhance its development impact. At the same time, our engagement and commitment to the growth of our development finance institutions should be both consistent and time invariant, and it should not be affected by the global operating environment, considering the benefits of counter-cyclical support provided by these banks, especially Afreximbank, over the years. More generally, as the challenging global environment and heightened macroeconomic management challenges raise the risk of financial and debt crisis, countries should abide by the treaty they have signed. Anything that affects the bank negatively will only undermine our rate of recovery and growth. Delivering the vision of our founding fathers, of whom Ghana's first president, Kwame Nkrumah, was such an inspiring advocate, and building prosperity for Africans on both sides of the Atlantic are the overarching themes of the 2023 edition of this year's meeting. Strengthening the financial wherewithal of our development finance institutions, especially Afreximbank, and enhancing coordination between these institutions and the African Union are key if the continent is to deliver successfully the vision of shared prosperity for Africans. I have outlined a few measures that should be taken not only by sovereign nations, but also by the vibrant African private sector and captains of industry, who should also play their part in building the Africa we want. Some are already shareholders of the bank, and I thank them for that. At the same time, I encourage those who are not yet to do the same. By investing in Afreximbank, we're all investing in our own growth, in the growth of our balance sheet, and in the development of our respective countries, thereby spurring even further the far-reaching work that has been done and is being done by that outstanding African, Professor Benedict Orama, and his excellent team. I am comforted by the array of expertise available to us. Now more than ever, it has become urgent to take the necessary steps to transition us towards becoming a resilient continent. Africa has to exploit her productive capabilities collectively and build the capacity of our continental development banks in order to realize the Africa we want and an Africa beyond aid. Accordingly, ladies and gentlemen, Your Excellencies, it is with great pleasure that I declare the 2023 edition of the Annual General Meetings of Afreximbank duly open. I wish you a very fruitful meeting. May God bless the African Export-Import Bank, Mother Africa, our kith and kin from the African diaspora, and us all. I thank you for your attention.